Welcome back to The Different Knock. Let's talk January. January is the first month of the year in the Julian and Gregorian calendars. Jarell Hato, Ivan Toney, Dusan Vlahovic. January's here and rumours are swirling regarding Arsenal's potential incoming transfer business. But as the window creaks into life, Babs sharpens his thumbnail-making skills and Fabrizio Romano develops a stress factor in his thumbs while his screen time goes to 19 hours a day, I have a bad feeling. And what I'm about to say does not benefit me, or you, or this YouTube channel's ad revenue, frankly, but I have to say what I really think. So, here goes. I don't think we will be able to improve our squad to the level that many fans will be hoping we can in this window. In short, I don't think we're about to watch anything exciting happen for Arsenal in the market. Sorry. Now, what is exciting to fans is obviously a subjective matter, but what I mean is anything from a kind of Ivan Toney or Victor Osimhen level signing, down to even maybe a Jakub Kiwior level signing of last January window. I'm not saying we're not going to do anything. I suspect we will do something. We can definitely try and be creative in the market, and if we get some sales over the line, who knows? I'm just not very optimistic everything falls into place for the box office signing that people really want. The first thing I'll say is I would love to be wrong. If you're here on January the 31st after we've just signed Mbappe commenting, LOL, you idiot, thank you. Comment away. I want to be wrong. But the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that Babs might have to starve this month.
Oh my, it's going to be a struggle.
So, why do I say this? There's a big picture thing, and then a financial thing, and then a few other things. So let's do big picture things first. When you're nearing the top of world football, improvements are harder to come by. Take David Raya. Statistically, he was a slightly better shot stopper than Ramsdale last season in terms of his underlying numbers. Okay, maybe he claims a few more crosses, has a higher starting position, and so on. But whatever you think of him, no one could argue those improvements have revolutionised us. The question of whether those marginal gains make him worth getting is up to you to decide. Clearly, Mikel felt the difference was worth the investment. But returning to the point, that's because he couldn't revolutionise us. David Raya is going to be unable to be as much better for us than Ramsdale was than his predecessor because Ramsdale is a brilliant goalkeeper who fits our style much better than Leno did. Raya is not going to be able to be part of the difference between 6 places in the league over the course of a few seasons because we can't go 6 places higher up than second. We're good now, is my point. So it follows that being good, anyone that massively improves us in any position on the pitch is going to be very, very good. Like Declan Rice. So a player that is good enough to come in this month and get us over the line for a title this season is going to have to be one of the best players in the world. And you know what very good players are? Expensive and often unavailable. Clubs don't want to let them go, especially in January. Apologies if that's a bit of an obvious point kind of laid out, but I do want to say it for those who say we just need a striker or we just need a winger. Because my response is, who do you mean? In my view, there's just not loads of players who, especially in January, can improve any top team, let alone us, not without shelling out huge money. And that brings me to my next reason. Clearly, no one except Arsenal's accountants will know our exact financial position, but based on an understanding of the rules, good reporting on salaries and transfer fees, previous public financial reports published by the club, and so on, one can build up a pretty good picture. During the course of researching this video, an Arsenal fan and FFP/football finance expert reached out to me to give me details of work they had done assessing Arsenal's likely financial position, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. Unfortunately, due to work commitments related to football finance, the person in question cannot be named, but having read the methodology they laid out, I think it's a really good estimate of our position. Firstly though, before we look at the specifics, we know Arsenal are already in a tricky position financially. David Raya's deal was structured in an unusual way for Arsenal, on an initial season-long loan with an option to buy. It's often forgotten he chose us over Bayern, by the way. There were lots of credible reports at the time that Arsenal had to do this for FFP reasons. The fee cited is 27 million for the buy option, and while it's not as simple as, well, Arsenal are 27 million pounds or less off their FFP limit then, as we'll come to in a second, we can logically conclude that FFP regulations are a factor in Arsenal's thinking. So that's the obvious reason big signings are probably off the table, but can we conclude anything more concretely about Arsenal's financial position? The experts say we can. When people say FFP, they're actually referring to 3 sets of rules that Arsenal need to abide by to take part in the competitions they do. The Premier League's Profit and Sustainability Rules, PSR, UEFA's Financial Sustainability Rules, FSR, and UEFA's Squad Cost Rules. The rules are all aimed at ensuring clubs don't spend loads more than they earn and remain profitable and sustainable. You're allowed to make certain losses per year, and they calculate that by looking at expenses like player wages, stadium costs, transfer fees out, and so on, compared with revenue from things like gate receipts, TV money, transfer fees in, and so on. Here we're having a look at the two side by side. Arsenal's revenue has increased, but at the same time, so have our expenses. Also, what's important to note is the Premier League rules look over the last 3 years. So you have to consider Arsenal's heavy spending since financial year 2021-22, not just this year, when calculating their position to spend any more. When taking into account that 3-year assessment period, working with lots of publicly available data, and then some logical estimates surrounding academy costs, broadcast income, commercial deals, and so on, they arrived at this number. 11.9 million. A financial expert thinks Arsenal, based on this estimate, are 11.9 million away from hitting their maximum losses allowed during that 3-year financial period. 11.9 million. What player who is going to be proven, hit the ground running, get us over the line for the title, can we get for 11.9 million? And that's before their wages. I think from my reading, the Kroenkes can put a bit more in if they choose, but it's not much. Some people have suggested the Champions League money will make a difference. It does, of course, but as mentioned, Arsenal have to make themselves sustainable over a longer period of time to abide by these rules, and that money will have been considered both in the summer when adding huge financial commitments to the club in both fees and wages, as well as considering its use moving forward in the future. It's not as simple as Arsenal won some group stage games, the money's in the bank account, let's use that. The bottom line is, whatever way you spin it, we're not sat there with £100 million in the bank account ready to make multi-100 million pound investments at a time in the season when prices are more inflated anyway. The best financial guesses, though you'll forgive me for not seeing Arsenal's books internally, tell us we are unable to. Maybe the club can do some creative accounting, maybe those estimates are just totally wrong, or maybe there's something I just don't know. All possible. But I think there's another point in here too. We know the Kroenkes are in it for the long haul and aren't the type of owners to pay over the odds in January for no reason. While they have done work in January before, we've also seen them stop short of meeting Shakhtar's valuation for Mudryk last winter, despite clearly wanting him, and previously when linked to strikers such as Vlahovic and Isak in January windows gone by, we appear, reportedly, to have walked away from putting down big fees. I can't see their stance changing when, if anything, we look less likely to win a title than we did at this point last January. And certainly the bookmakers agree. Then, finally, for this dessert of the disappointment dinner I've cooked for you, we come to the specific cases of the players we've been linked to. Tony just isn't happening. Brentford having Burmo out, Wish has gone to AFCON, they reportedly want 100 million. Come on, even if you love the player, please tell me how we make that deal happen. Brentford aren't going to loan us Ivan Toney without a huge amount of money up front if it's on an obligation. They're looking nervously over their shoulders right now after a tricky patch of form, and they won't want to lose a striker. And they would definitely want to replace him this window if he went. Vlahovic, no chance. Hato, maybe, but does he come in and push us over the line? Osimhen will be far too much. Zubimendi has a release clause, but does he play ahead of Rice, considering his best position is as a 6? I just can't see any of the names we're being linked to making a big difference to us in the second half of the season. Equally, we may not know that name right now, and that's not to say that there isn't a name. But my point is, I don't think the name, if it emerges, is going to excite Arsenal fans. Now, sales. Sales might be a way of seeing something happen. If we can get some of the Hale End boys out the door, that represents pure profit in terms of the financial rules, and who knows what could happen. But then you look at the specifics of some of those cases too, and I start to get more cynical. If we were going to let Eddie go in January, I don't know why we wouldn't have given him permission to talk to Palace, who are interested, according to David Ornstein, to speed that process up. His start against Fulham feels like another sign he's in the plans, and considering the lack of goals we have at the moment, I can't see him leaving. Reece, I don't know why we'd sign Reece to a new deal, then sell him in January. I can't see that happening unless we have a replacement signed up, considering we're short there, and specifically short of real wingers. Maybe, but it feels unlikely, despite reported West Ham interest. And finally, Smith Rowe. This is the one I can see happening the most, but I don't see us getting loads of money for a player who, despite the promise, has mostly flattered to deceive in recent times, and hasn't scored a league goal for years at this point. Again, I'd love to be wrong, it's just my view. I know I have a lot of patience with this team and coach, and I know it annoys a lot of people watching. I read the comments. And to be clear, I'm never saying my expectations of the team are right. That's a totally subjective thing, and it's up to every individual to decide. But here's how I see it. I predicted us to come second, and I'm willing to wait. I don't want us to make stupid early decisions on players or ridiculous financial choices because we're chasing a stopgap signing in January. I want to be sat here on the different knock in 2030 with 10 million subscribers talking about the dominance of Arsenal's 7-8 years, as Mikel gracefully retires and goes to be Barcelona coach. You decide which is more fanciful, the dominance or my YouTube subscribers. We have time on our side. Rice is 24, Saka's 22, Martinelli's 22, Saliba's 22, Ødegaard's 25. I would, of course, love the title this season, and I'm not saying I don't want to win. I want to win. but making the right decisions, not decisions that appease the fans, have got the club into the right position for the first time sustainably in 20 years. If we can do the right thing and it's exciting, great, let's do it. If we can't, I think it's okay. In any case, we may have to wait it out, as January is usually unpredictable, and the first month of the year in the Julian and Gregorian calendars. If we don't do anything at all, though, I might unplug my Wi-Fi on January the 31st. If you like The Different Knock, you can support us on Patreon monthly, or you can buy us a coffee.